So hello. Thank you all for joining me this evening. I'm Katelind Groenhagen, Director of Sales for Propel Orthodontics. And before we get started, I do want to remind everyone that we are streaming this live for a reason. I do encourage our industry friends and of course doctors and team members to send in comments or questions for any of these wonderful women throughout the evening. I will do my best to make sure we get to them all. And as I mentioned, my name is Kate. I'm here today with this powerful and intelligent panel of women in the industry to open up a dialogue, to put our heads together, to create relationships and provoke thought and action that will serve our orthodontic providers and ultimately the orthodontic patients. So I'd like to go around and have each of you to briefly introduce yourself as well as the companies you represent. So let us know where you work, what your position is, how long you've been there, and what city you're from. Michelle, do you want to start us off?
Sure. My name is Michelle Shimmin. I am the owner of Shimmin Consulting. I am based out of Seattle, Washington, although sometimes it gets a little bit harder to claim Seattle as my city under the circumstances. But I actually have the privilege of traveling the world, training and coaching orthodontists and their teams in all aspects of their business, from sales and scheduling protocols through financials and clinical efficiencies. I work with top tier practices to provide the tools and the training for clarity with their team, which delivers the highest level of accountability. I've been in the industry of orthodontics since June of 1990, and I have had the pleasure of working with hundreds of orthodontic practices.
That's amazing. That's wonderful. Sarah, why don't you go next?
Hi, I'm Sarah Sharfstein. I work at Aspen Dental, so I'm responsible for all things orthodontics and dental scanning. And I've been with Aspen for about 2 years, and I'm currently living in Chicago.
Wonderful. Brandy, do you want to take it next?
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Brandy Long. I'm the Senior Director of Commercialization for our orthodontic digital products for Ormco. That's quite a mouthful of a title. But my role primarily focuses on bringing Spark Clear aligners into the market here in North America. I've been with Ormco in a variety of other roles for a little over 10 years now. So it's been really great to evolve my career with Ormco, and especially in the orthodontic side of the business.
Awesome. And Jessica, why don't you finish off our group?
Great. Good evening, everyone. Hi, I'm Jess Mcnulty. I'm a sales director with Align Technology, covering largely the Northeast. So for those of you who welcome Invisalign and iTero scanners into your practice each and every day, that's the team I work with. I've been here for about 2.5 years. Prior, I spent about 14 on the medical side. I've seen a lot of transitions, particularly in all different, medical disciplines, from cardiology, neurology, gastroenterology, and now what we all know really is a seminal moment in dentistry and orthodontics. So thank you so much, Kate, for putting this together. I'm really happy to be here.
Of course. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. And thank you all for sharing, ladies. Now, first question, this one's a big one. How are you guys doing? Have you returned to the office? How has this transition been? Have you been surviving at home with your families over the last few months?
I'll go. I'll jump in with that one. My feedback probably won't be too different than what a lot of people experience, but currently working from home, have been for the last 3 months. Really looking forward to getting out there and into offices again as they feel comfortable having us, of course. But I was just telling my husband the other day, I'm like, I think we need to make an investment in the home to turn our guest room into a real office, because the somewhat temporary good situation that I used to use maybe 1 day a week, I'm now definitely pushing the limits on these 5 days a week in the house. So that's definitely going to be probably an area where we're going to focus in the next few months.
Mm-hmm. Nice. So like you, Brandy, right now, I'm pretty much white knuckling the moment my boys are going to come barreling through the dining room and serving as my pseudo office. So I have had the ability to be home-based, which, has been great because schools have been closed. And I think a lot, maybe like you, Brandy, out of respect for the offices, as our representatives are going back in, we really don't want to flood the zone with too many people as you're trying to figure out PPE and workflow. But I miss everyone.
I do too, Jessica. I miss hugs. Like, I'm a hugger, and my team has been back on the road and out with our clients for the last 5 weeks probably, and really been able to visit with so many of our teams and our clients, even going into their offices, which is so fulfilling to us. I find I really miss the hugs. I miss that physicality that we have. And actually it's definitely a challenge to coach and work behind that mask all day. I mean, I'm an RDA and a clinical trainer. I've worked behind masks for years, but it's very different when you can't pull it down. You know, We're typically, we step away from the chair and pull it down. And so, you know, kudos to the teams out there that are really taking this seriously and just doing as well as they are. Definitely do not undervalue that, you know, what it takes out of them. But I meant, we're in a smile industry. I miss seeing those smiles.
They have to come from your eyes now. You have to be super expressive with your eyes.
Right.
Exactly. And Sarah,
Definitely been I was just going to say, it's definitely been a huge change. I've traveled a little bit, which is kind of eerie and creepy to be in an airport at this point, but starting to head back into the office a little bit and trying to bring teams back together as much as possible. But it's definitely been kind of a shift, getting your team comfortable with Zoom and being remote, but sort of maintaining that culture and still feeling connected to everyone. So big change, I think, for all of us at this point.
Definitely. And as you guys can tell, this is not my normal background with some curtains over here. And I don't know what this photo is. I'm in a hotel in Atlanta this week, but just as you guys said, being very respectful of offices, only going into the offices that want us or need us. There's a lot of different feelings out there from different practices. So just trying to be respectful, but also be present and be there as needed. So it does feel really good to get back out there and work again. You know, I do have to say there is just something that feels really great about getting back out there.
It does.
Absolutely.
Now, we are going to get into the discussion on technologies and tactics to propel orthodontic practices forward in this new normal. But first, I think I would be remiss if I did not acknowledge this female presence that we have here and this power in this group right here among this small group of women. So I'd like to spend a few moments discussing some experiences, some challenges, and some wins that have paved the path to your current career. So we'll kind of go through these questions. Feel free, anybody, to jump in at any point and share your experiences. But what are some challenges that you're seeing or you're seeing other women face in the workplace right now? And what unique strengths do you think that we as women have to be able to encounter them and overcome them?
I'll start. So I would say, you know, particularly as we think about COVID, I think women, you know, maybe stereotypically take on a lot more as it relates to familial responsibilities, whether that's taking care of a sick or elderly parent, whether that's like helping out with children. And so I think we're uniquely qualified, I would say, just in terms of resilience and being able to really multitask and kind of stay organized. But I would say this, you know, unique situation with COVID has probably pushed people to their limits and really has challenged how resilient we are and how much we can rise to that occasion. As I talk to some of my colleagues and friends with small children at home, they're trying to sort of maintain their job and stay really focused and achieve, but then they also have 2 children, they're homeschooling and sort of everything that goes along with it. So it's been, I think, kind of an interesting time for women, certainly.
And I think part of that is just letting go of perfect. That, what was that interview? Was it like a CNBC interview where there was like a male reporter and you saw the wife like scrambling to get the kids? It was this viral video. But that's been our environment. I think certainly anybody who's working from home, and I'm pretty sure that most people are just used to it these days. And whereas maybe I was completely mortified and embarrassed when we were first all remote and working from home, now it's just kind of a normal occurrence. Like you're probably gonna hear my kids screaming in the background at some point during this hour as well. But yeah, I 100% agree with that. That's definitely been, it's been a huge challenge trying to also, I think we were talking about this earlier as a group, just the lines being blurred between are you officially off work versus like in work, because there's no commute time anymore where I'm decompressing. It's like leaving the office and going into the next room and cooking dinner and not necessarily having, you know, that few minutes of downtime that you need to just kind of like reset yourself, do any last minute calls, and really turn off when you walk in the door. That it's all kind of blurred now. So that's been a bit of a challenge too. And just kind of setting boundaries has been a more important goal of mine that I've always been really bad at, but especially now trying to make a really concentrated effort to drawing a line.
You know, Brandy, I'm so glad you said that. I was actually, as both Sarah and you started, I was thinking, I feel like with so much of this virtual and the no travel, you know, our travel stopped for that time being, stopping work, like that line is so blurred. I find myself working 12-hour days and not giving myself the freedom to be done working, and finding that balance with my family. I mean, my sons are in college, but they're home now, and spending time with my husband and knowing that it's okay to call it a day. But that's a challenge. That's hard to do, you know, in the role, and to find that balance and separation.
I think where I've seen a lot of my women peers, a lot of my friends, and a lot of the doctors we work with really rise to the challenge. There's just something about our leadership style that's a little different, our ability to connect really with the true human element of what someone's going through. And there's been really no way to get through this period right now without being able to acknowledge that whether it's your coworker or someone who reports to you or a patient or a parent is feeling just a different level of emotion and things that maybe they don't want to share that's really impacting them. And so I think we've seen a lot of our women leaders, doctors, do really well with their staff, because you see the kind of leadership they need now, where it's not just simply blocking and tackling, when are we coming back, what's our workflow, but a lot of staff members have been genuinely afraid to come back.
It's empathy.
Yeah, that empathetic leadership, really meet them where they are and know that before you can even tackle your business as an ortho or a dentist, you might have to lean in on your staff first and rally them as a team and get them through what's a really great time for them. So I think as women, we do that really, really well, and it's served us well.
Yeah, you make a great point on that, Jess. And, you know, Sarah, you kind of touched on it in the beginning as well. As women, we're typically very, very nurturing. We also are typically great at multitasking, which is why our boundaries get blurred so easily. Or my husband will make fun of me because I will be doing emails with a face mask on because I won't have time to do it later, but I want to get it done. But whether it is that aspect of multitasking and trying to get more done, or being able to have that empathy for the team members, our team members, for offices, to understand everyone's journey, everyone's experience going through this is completely different. This has affected everyone in a unique way. So I think you all made some really great points. And this is something that we can take into our lives, and other women can take into their lives post-COVID, post-pandemic. And, you know, take that and run with it for the future. And this kind of leads me into our next one, where sometimes as women, we may struggle with power or potentially even expressing our strengths to our friends, colleagues, employees, whatever it might be. But I consider each of you on this call to be a leader, to be successful, to be someone I look up to, and to be an inspiration to others. What is one thing each of you does each day to feel empowered, or a couple things if you have them?
What a great question, Kate. Thanks so much. It's interesting that you ask that question right now, because I actually feel over the last couple of weeks, especially, that I've spent a lot of time really thinking about this because of the messaging that I feel like has come back to me through actions that I strive to take daily with those around me. I do want to touch a little bit on the importance of leadership, because I'll talk what that represents to me. But really, humility, kindness, and serving others outside of your position is something that I strive for, even in a strong coaching session or in an opportunity where I am providing feedback for an individual to improve. And in my recent reflection, as we're talking about, you know, we're very busy running businesses, supporting clients or training our industry. But when I think about what actually empowers me, what resonates with me is that I feel most empowered when I'm lifting others up around me. I don't want it to sound corny, but when I see those around me truly fly in their best self, reach for greater successes and thrive, I really feel so much strength and a true sense of accomplishment when I'm able to influence and support and inspire those around me. And then to really celebrate their successes, I feel like my cup runneth over. So it just helps me feel that much stronger as a person because I have that ability and I can accomplish that. And I definitely feel that, one of the most impactful steps that you can take in leadership is to invite others on the journey and to lead by example in empowering others in maximizing their strengths. And really, you just cannot lose in that process. And personally, that's when I feel the most empowered. And I feel that goes a long way with what Sarah touched on with our intrinsic ability as women as well.
I love that. I love that message. Thank you, Michelle. Does anyone else have anything they want to share?
I think just maybe also I totally agree. That was such a great answer.
It's hard to follow.
Well, for me personally, every day I just need to take a little bit of time for myself. I go to bed really early, but I also wake up early so I can go running or do something for myself before the kids wake up. Just something to stay, Otherwise, I'm like, I have to have 5 cups of coffee instead of maybe just 2. But it like really wakes up my brain and I feel like really on it for the day. Otherwise, I'm always kind of a little like, where am I going next? What's happening? But just taking a little time for yourself and feeling okay with that.
I was going to say, like, one of the things we always talk about on the other ladies on my team too is you can't pour from an empty cup. And I think that there's times I'm really good at that, slowing down and going, this is my hour, even if it's got to be 6 a.m. and it's on the treadmill, just where this is my time to decompress. And then there's times you fail miserably at it, right into your routine and you're hard charging and you're driving. But I noticed that even if the day is longer, if there's that space that's just for how do I feed what I need to feed, you're a better leader, you're a better mom, probably a better provider and practitioner. And I just think with that comes, and the last thing I'll say on this is I think as you get longer in your professional career and your confidence gains, you learn to trust your instincts and listen to it. That when that voice inside your head goes off or your spidey senses go off about something, you're confident in, I need to raise my voice here and share that. And that it's not always an internal dialogue. And a lot of that comes from knowing that even as you grow your career, got to imagine there's a lot of providers on the line where you're running a practice, there's not another boss, right? It's you. It's easy to get siloed, but having that network of other women that I can reach out to, whether it's in my company or outside, and say, I'm having a day, man. Like, what can we do? And having that support is I just think it's important to have your network and the people you can go to and not stay siloed.
I love that. And giving yourself the grace to have that. That's wonderful. Sarah, did you have something you were going to add as well?
Yeah, I would just say for me, it was, I kind of agree with everybody. There's been a lack of boundaries, shall I say. It's just been starting early, ending late. And so for me, I got a Peloton. And so that was like, kind of carving out that time first thing in the morning before the day gets started has been so amazing and so important. But I think for me, sort of leading through this time is trying to encourage my team to do the same. So there's a couple girls on my team who have Pelotons. And so, we'll chat about it from time to time, but also just trying to keep the team healthy, because I think it's really hard when you don't have your own boundaries. That always sort of trickles over into the way you lead and how your team perceives how they should be spending their time and the hours they should be working. So I've been trying really hard to sort of encourage them to take that walk, to take the day off, to do what they need to sort of stay sane. Because I think everybody's sort of, working overtime, extending themselves, moving a mile a minute. And it's really hard, I think, as a leader, unless you sort of say like, whoa, time out, we're going to pause for a second, or you need a day off, or we need to do something. It's hard for people to feel comfortable to do that. So I think that's been important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And whether it's health or an hour of, working out or a walk, I try to do my daily walks. And the other day, Alyssa Nugent, who's at our office, who is just wonderful and helps me organize everything. She called me the other week and I ignored her call, and I texted her. I said, sorry, I'm on a mental health walk. She was like, talk to you tomorrow. So I think it is important, as all of you had said, to take that time for yourself, whatever it is. Find those minutes to do whatever it is that's going to fill your cup, as Jess so nicely said. So the next question I want to go into, and these all kind of blend together somewhat, but this can be pre-COVID, post-COVID, currently right now. What advice do each of you have for young female professionals, whether they are looking to become an orthodontist, are an orthodontist right out of residency, or simply curious about the industry as a whole, and maybe they want to be working in the industry as the five of us are? What advice do you have for a young woman?
For me, I would say, you know, and I know this sounds like a cheesy response, but that role of mentorship, you know, it's a very unique thing. You look at the number of women who are graduating from dental school, becoming orthodontists. It's an industry that is about to be powered by women. But, you know, you see that evolution of, you're not just a clinician. Are we going to have the next generation of women business owners? Will you see the ADA and all of these different networks be staffed, and membership and leadership be women? And so many of female professionals, orthodontists and dentists, you know, who have already built their careers may not have had that hand to stretch up to another female to say, here's how we strengthen our referral networks. Here's how you run your business. Here's a sounding board. But if, you know, coming into the profession, I would say find that person. And if you are in that in the profession, be that person, extend that hand. And it's just a huge opportunity for women in this industry right now.
So well said. Go ahead,
Sarah. I would definitely agree with all of that. I think mentorship's key, whether you're on the business side of things or on the clinical side. I've been in this space for, I guess I'm going on almost 14 years. So I'll just start by saying I think it's absolutely the best industry to be in, period, regardless of the side you're on. But I would say it's you know, moving very quickly. And I'd say out of all of dentistry, clear aligners and orthodontics in general is probably the fastest evolving category. I would say just being open-minded and being really progressive. And, you know, I think a lot of times when you push yourself and get yourself to a place where you're uncomfortable, really great things happen. And so whether that's clinically, whether that's taking that leap of faith job, whether that's challenging yourself and sort of stretching outside your comfort zone, I'd say, you know, just sort of taking that leap and being willing to change and willing to sort of evolve both, I think, personally and professionally is huge.
Definitely. And expanding your network. I mean, I think we all kind of gravitate initially, especially when or at least myself, when starting out, you tend to gravitate to people who are most like you, or people who you feel most comfortable around. And I think looking back now, I would have diversified my network a little more, especially with the accessibility that we all have today with LinkedIn and social media. It's so easy to find people that are outside of our own little universe, to really just get other people's perspectives. And especially in the orthodontic industry, there's manufacturing, you know, associates, there's consulting associates. There are a lot of people that you can network with, in addition to your own partners within the ortho space, the orthodontic professional space that you can talk to. But that different perspective that you're getting from a well-rounded group of individuals can provide career paths, provide advice. There's just so much more information and knowledge that we have accessibility to that maybe we didn't have before.
Well, and my experience as well, whether, you know, I absolutely love to interact with colleagues and collaborate, and the creative juices just really flow, and we all bring strengths, and it doesn't matter if you're, you know, you don't need to be competitors. We're colleagues, and we collaborate together, and we create a platform and education and opportunities to just, again, better our industry and better the experiences that our patients have within our offices and our practices. And we all have strengths that we can really help. I loved, Kate, that you mentioned that mentorship, you know, or Brandy, that to really dive into utilizing those individuals in any business structure that they have been blessed to engage in, to be able to glean what you can to become the best of what you are.
Definitely, definitely. And it's, from the mentorship that Jess mentioned and diversifying your group and just reaching out, having an open mind. I, honestly, where were you guys 6.5 years ago when I started in this industry? This is all phenomenal advice. And Sarah, you also said it great. This is the best industry. Although I always hesitate to tell people that because I feel like it is our little secret. But it is a phenomenal industry. And I think whether you are on the doctor side or manufacturing or sales or whatever it is, there's room for all of us. Michelle, you hit the nail on the head. There's room for all of us. You don't have to compete. We can make room for each of us. And that's why I love having this group here. Outside of Sarah, I haven't met the rest of you in real life, and you just got a little email from me saying, hi, do you want to do this event with me? I've heard amazing things about you, that you're a rock star. So I appreciate all of you doing it. I appreciate all of you accepting an email from some random girl at Propel that you may or may not have heard of. But that is great advice for any women or men within the industry. So it's not exclusive right there. And that kind of leads us to one of my final questions before we head into some company missions. But Brandy, you kind of touched on this a little bit, and on my team and within Propel, I do my best to practice not only inclusive leadership, but supportive leadership, providing an environment where employees can speak up, they can feel heard, they can feel welcome. But to take it one step further, what can the 5 of us as leaders do to promote change and to be more inclusive and supportive of women, and especially those who belong to other marginalized communities?
That's a big one. That was a big question.
It's a big question, but how do we include and support everyone, especially if they don't look like us necessarily, or they're not your stereotypical person, these other marginalized groups? How do we make sure that we're including them and supporting them?
I could tell you something just so personal for me and my team, and an experience we went through recently. But, you talked about the importance of inclusion, right? A lot of people focus on diversity, but I think as women or, as minority groups, that inclusive piece is important, where you don't really feel like you have to change who you are to fit in, right? Where you're thinking about what you're saying. And I could just tell you, I'll just share something very personal. As our team in our area of the country the Black Lives Matter movement started, right? And we're in the Northeast, and demonstrations were happening every day. And we realized that as a group, we were more quiet about it than we should be. And because no one really knew what to say. It just felt like when you're dealing with issues like this, no one wants to say the wrong thing. Everybody's afraid to say the wrong thing. But you're also petrified not to acknowledge it, especially when you have peers on your team, family members, their community members that are going through this and are just devastated by it. So I just, I think one of the things we talk about a lot on our group is making a safe place to engage, and for it to be okay to say, I don't know, I need to learn, talk to me about this. And I just think I got a lot of humbling lessons on how we might be adapting who we are to fit in. When one of my team members, we were talking through this, and he's African-American, and we were talking through Black Lives Matters, and instead of really being able to hit it on the head, I noticed he said to me, the situation that's happening right now. And it was just a very diluted word, almost very measured, to not share the emotion he might have been feeling or reveal how he felt about it, or potentially maybe to make sure that I wasn't uncomfortable. And so I think as women, we're really dialed into the verbal and nonverbal cues of our people, but how we have to raise not just diversity, but inclusion, and make sure people feel really comfortable being who they are and sharing what they're really experiencing.
Yeah. Wow. Very, very well said. And thank you for sharing that story. I think you hit the nail on the head. We have to make sure that people feel comfortable being who they are, and that they don't have to change who they are to fit in. Very well said. Any comments from anyone else on that?
I mean, I think there's initiatives, there's initiatives everywhere to if you're a company that you work with or those that are around you, if that background, if it's not as diverse as you would want it to be, making more of an effort, and as a leader, being the person who's leading that effort and leading that charge. I mean, I know my team, my sales team, about half of my associates are female, and it's a big initiative. One, to make sure that we're putting the right people in the right positions, but two, I think the best ideas come from people who aren't an exact clone or makeup of ourselves, because we're not perfect. And I get the best perspective from people who have different opinions, and respectfully, we're allowed to disagree or agree. We're all professionals. But just encouraging that, and encouraging that we celebrate differences in any way that they are around you, whether it's on your team, whether they're people in your network or people that you work with as customers, or clients. It's all been beneficial. I've never seen an example where being an inclusive leader has led to something negative. It's only brought positive change and new ideas and new creativity. I get stale for creativity. So I look for different ways to get new ideas all the time. And most of the time they're coming from people who aren't the same background as myself. And it's always been a great thing.
Awesome. Wonderful. Well, good. Well, thank you all for sharing that. And I think that's some great feedback. I really do. And just being supportive, being inclusive, doing the best that you can. And another thing, I think as women, a lot of times we don't necessarily, have that ego of being afraid to say, I don't know the answer. Help me understand. We can have that humility. Michelle, you're laughing at me. But I love to say, I don't know. Like, can you please help educate me? And you can do the same thing in these types of situations. It's okay to say you don't know. It's okay to try to learn more. And I think that's something as women, we do have a superpower, if you will, to work with that on. So
I love that, superpowers.
I think a key to strong leadership is humility. And part of being able to say, tell me more about that. I didn't know that part of it. And glean and learn from others around you just make you that much better. And humility and leadership is very powerful.
I agree.
I think it's also, along with that, I would say, like, creating a comfortable environment for it to be okay to fail. And when you've gotten it wrong, sort of being the first to say, like, okay, guys, like, even making fun of yourself, like, I got that one wrong, I got it. Because I think as leaders, it's, it's a part of our role to create opportunities for our team, to give them that constructive feedback. And I think it makes you far more, I'd say, approachable maybe. But when you can sort of give yourself that feedback, give your team the opportunity to give the honest feedback, and sort of be real with them, I think makes a difference.
Michelle's talking a lot about humility, but there's a place for vulnerability sometimes, right?
Yeah.
Right? To be the first to show your skinned knees and bruised elbows and make it safe. I love that you said that, Sarah. I think that's great.
Yeah, I agree. That was all fantastic. So I know I spit it out and it was a big question and we all got a little bit nervous, but that's exactly what we're trying to change, so that we have that humility, so we are vulnerable and kind of can continue to have these conversations. So thank you all for your answers on that one. Thank you for being candid through the whole Q&A part and sharing your experiences. So now, with respect to the effect of COVID-19 on the orthodontic and dental practices, our companies have all had to reevaluate industry needs. And I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who, at the end of March, when the world shut down, mid-March, Sarah and I had dinner 2 nights before. I'm pretty sure I'm not the only one who was freaking out at that moment of, oh my goodness, what are we gonna do? All ortho and dental practices are closing. What in the world is gonna happen? So at Propel, we pretty quickly saw how practices need to start prioritizing patient convenience and safety alongside patient care, frankly, now more than ever. So practices were quickly transitioning to virtual consults and care to reduce those office visits. And we've always seen at Propel reduced visits as a major win for patients as well as practices. But now, as I'm sure all of you guys are going to relate to, it's become a standard across the industry, and it kind of happened overnight. It all happened pretty quickly. So we're working with our doctors on streamlining their workflows using available technology that I know all of you are going to touch on a little bit, and the proper way to maximize their investment, their time, their bottom line. And one example at Propel that we have is that we're working with customers to utilize our vibration product line, the vPro series, with most, if not all of their cases. So over the last 2 months, we've seen our customers delivering a higher volume of aligners between visits, maybe 15 to 20 trays, maybe their entire kit of trays, and then sending the patient home with a vPro. So they're communicating with patients digitally, they're seeing that treatment's tracking, they're seeing that treatment is progressing quickly, and it's really comfortable, whether frankly it's brackets or aligners. It doesn't matter, but all with a device that's used 5 minutes a day. So at Propel, there's clinical benefits that are going to help the orthodontic cases progress in a predictable way. There's a new revenue stream for those offices who decide to upcharge for the service, and there's a new way for them to differentiate and market those orthodontic practices for what patients at the end of the day want: quick, quality treatment and fewer visits. So that's kind of how Propel has changed and tried to steer our ship in a different way. But I'd love to hear from all of you, a short summary, if you will, of your company's mission or major priority in response to our new normal. And Sarah, if you want to start us off, I mean, you have 850 locations nationwide that you manage. So how did you do that so effectively during COVID?
Well, I'd be remiss if I didn't say, I mean, we have an incredible, incredible team. So as Kate mentioned, we have 850 locations. We open a new location every 4 days. We see about 25,000 new patients a day and about 15,000 phone calls a day scheduling new patient exams. So as you can imagine, it's a pretty large organization. And when all of this happened, there was sort of this like, okay, we've got to shut things down. And then we were opening things up. And so I think we took a pretty aggressive approach, super thoughtful and deliberate, but pretty aggressive. When I look at some of the other DSOs, I think we probably closed things down much faster. And we're really trying to be a great support system for our doctors, because as you could imagine, we've got some owners who own 15, 20 locations. And so I think, one of the great things of being part of a DSO is really, you've got that support in every major functional area. So pretty quickly out of the gate, we set up task force. So every doctor essentially had a specific team that was designated to support them through this transition. So it had somebody from HR. You start talking about furloughs and you've got doctors going, how do I do that? What does that conversation sound like, right? We had compliance people on the call, regulatory operators that were supporting these teams. And so I think when you talk to a lot of our doctors, I still think they're still in shock with how well we supported them through the transition. And as they talk to some of their colleagues in private practice, I think more than ever, they really appreciate the support that they got. I think at the same time, we're very bullish about the category. I mean, I think we genuinely believe that dental is one of those things that really can rebound pretty quickly from something like this. And I think we saw that even in the recession, a decade ago. And so for us, it was really about where are we going to place our bets, right? We want to be bullish about this. We want to, we know that patients are going to be coming back in. We know when offices open back up, we want to be well positioned. So pretty quickly, we started transitioning things from live learning to virtual learning, which, sort of felt like overnight. We really leaned in. Two of our key strategic initiatives is obviously clear aligners and implants. And so pretty quickly overnight, we converted a lot of our learning into virtual and really tried to make it as engaging, two-way as possible. So it wasn't just like a webinar and static. So everything we did was pretty dynamic. And then we continued to invest, particularly in ortho. So in ortho, June was our largest month. We grew about 50%. So yeah, we're pretty proud about it with it. But we're extremely promotional. I think unlike others, maybe I shouldn't say that, but we really feel like we know who our consumer is. And so coming out of this, we really leaned in heavily to promotions in all different categories. And I think we saw a tremendous amount of growth. And then I'd say two of the things we did specific to technology was, you know, on the general dental side, we really leaned into virtual care. So we set up like a teledentistry platform. And then specific to ortho, we're in the process of integrating dental monitoring. So that moving forward, if there was a second recurrence of this, we'd be well positioned. And then obviously adding Propel to all of our cases so that we can make sure that if we are seeing patients less frequently or delivering more sets of aligners, we're in a good place to know that their care is under control and will be predictable.
Yeah, that's great. Great. It sounds like you had a lot to manage and a lot to handle, but sounds like you sailed right through it. So kudos to you. And
we're in a good place. We feel pretty good. We're pretty bullish about what the next couple months hold for us.
That's great. And congrats on the amazing June. That's awesome.
Well, that's a lot of doctors, a lot of team members, an incredible ortho team, but we feel really good and we think we'll have another record month in July. So
awesome.
Pretty good.
Awesome. Brandy, do you want to tell us a little bit about what you and what Ormco is doing?
Yeah, sure, of course. So, you know, ever since since we also had to shut down for a little bit of time back in March, and so it gave the executive team time to take pause and really understand what's important, what's our priority, and obviously prioritizing the safety of our employees and our customers was number one. And then as there was the opportunity, because there were a lot of offices that were closed, was providing a lot of on-demand education about some of our products that might be able to help during this time. So a few of those I've mentioned would be our Smart Arch system. So we've got these wires that are able to take a few wires out of the finishing phase of treatment. So on that fixed appliance side of the business, being able to extend treatment intervals and not necessarily have patients back in the office as frequently, especially if they're not feeling comfortable. So we talk about, you know, our employees not being comfortable necessarily going to office. Sometimes the doctor's own employees aren't comfortable being back in the office, and patients it's all trying to assess what is that right mix and providing solutions to meet either one. And then obviously on the aligner side of the business, that does make it quite a bit easier for people to prolong those treatment intervals and having patients back. And being closed for that amount of time, being able to offer different solutions to patients who are currently in treatment. So if we can provide additional aligners, we already have all the information that we need to give them additional aligners. That makes that really simple. Providing, you know, creative shipping solutions. So if an office is closed, but a doctor, you know, is practicing out of a different practice, or different ways that we can get aligners to people so they're not having to wait for a long extended period of time to continue on with their treatment. So those are sorts of things that we've been working with, in addition to just offering virtual treatment management. There's some services that we're value add services that we always look to partner with outside companies and offer our customers to make sure that they've got tools and ways to be able to communicate with their patients and understand how is treatment going today, and making sure that they've got everything they need to be successful and getting those beautiful smiles that they've been looking for.
Yeah, I love it. I love it. Jess, do you want to take us next and tell us a little bit about what you and Align have been doing?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's so cool to hear is just the synergies, right, amongst everybody on the line. And I think what's really encouraging to hear is first and foremost how the organizations we work with prioritize the health and safety of our employees and our doctors, right? That they slowed down and made sure that people came first. And I think everybody's pretty well versed that, you know, Align has Invisalign. And we have the iTero platform. And so the world was already moving very rapidly towards this digital tipping point. And so as offices shut down, we were very privileged and felt, you know, really good with our providers that they had so many patients that continue to progress in their health and in their treatment because, as Brandy said, the availability of an aligner and that low touch, low aerosol, they could go extended periods and their mouth and their dentition still improving. But I think the things I really want to highlight that we did differently that I think we're very proud of as a company is first that empathetic piece to slow down. And I think when you're part of a sales organization, there could be high risk of being tone deaf in a moment. And everybody from the top down to the rep all went like this and said, this is a moment we need to show up big for our providers as business owners and a scary professional period. So we led with that empathetic engagement. We started by pulling doctors from all over different regions together on Zoom roundtables pulled the Band-Aid off on the virtual and said, let's get on the line, let's get you with your peers, let's talk to each other. Tell us what you're thinking about, where's your top concerns. And from that, when we saw everything from PPE to infection protocol to staffing to how to do more dentistry with less time, we propped up a full series we made free and available to all our providers called the Come Back Stronger series that put industry experts in all these categories with content that they can use and replicate in their offices. We also propped up our own virtual appointment and virtual care platforms that, again, we made just free of charge to any provider, so that through their social media and then through internal marketing, they could communicate and bring in consults while their doors were closed, so that as their doors open, they had a way to run their businesses. And then we also did the virtual care platform, which allows doctors to remote treat, right? So they get the low touch, one touch visit. And then from there, they're able to track the progress. Patients can share pictures. And then at last, I would just say is just, we never went off the airwaves on the behalf of our providers. We kept our marketing up to moms and teens. We've reinvested and launched a second campaign just now. And so made sure that when our doctors were ready to come back, patients knew where they can find them and find treatment. So that's a little of what we did over at Align.
That's wonderful. And Michelle, how about yourself? Do you want to touch on it a little bit before we get to our next segment?
Yeah, absolutely. So really, Shimmin Consulting's mission has always been that of providing clarity with the tools and the training to the practices, the doctors, the team members, that delivers the highest level of accountability. Really setting every team member up in removing perception through providing that clarity so that they can succeed the greatest. And really now more than ever, we have found through this recent months, the importance of what we like to call our playbooks or our position manuals. That's really what we're known for and what we implement throughout practices. But really, it also demonstrated to our team members that we partner with the importance that those are fluid and how important it is to be able to pivot and remain proactive in such a changing industry. And we can really update those and customize those for each one of our clients. So that's been a focus that we have really tapped into, because really every practice's reality is different. And it's imperative that you are customizing the processes, the protocols, really the workflow, the digital, virtual, which I'll talk on in a bit. How can we customize it to this practice's reality? How can we create that playbook that sets the team member up to be the most successful? And then we've talked a lot about, and I think it's just, we've all seen it, a large amount through a lot of the training and education and roundtables that we've had over the last few months, really on how we have, I use the analogy that oftentimes before COVID, practices saw that virtual digital in the future. Like, this is the direction we were going. There were some very proactive or progressive practices that really took it and ran with it and succeeded at it well. And through COVID, everybody was just pushed into the deep end on it. They couldn't just tip their toe into the water, but they literally were thrown in, and they had to embrace that, or their practice was at risk. And so this was the time to not only implement the digital and virtual platforms and workflow, but to also train the team members, to practice with them and to role play with them, and to really get them to understand this benefit, because that's really where the success of those processes come in. And that's been a huge focus that my team at Shimmin Consulting has really spent time on over the last few months.
I love it. That's awesome.
Great.
Thank you all for that. It's so great to see each of you and your companies taking care of not only your customers, but your teams, whether it is, Sarah, the doctors that you work with who are your employees, or the rest of us who are taking care of our employees, but the customer needs as well, and frankly, what the industry is calling for. So I'd like to move at this point into the last portion of our discussion. We all represent companies in the orthodontic and dental community and are continually working to improve practice and patient experiences. Our doctors are in a unique position where they're being, frankly, just as Michelle said, forced to adapt and change quickly. So to give our doctors the credit that they deserve, they are progressive, they're forward-thinking individuals, and they do adapt to change really well. But nonetheless, it can still be really overwhelming, especially when you're trying to decide what steps to take, where to start, and how to make those movements in order to make the adjustments that you need to set them up for not only immediate, but also long-term success. So Michelle, being a consultant in this industry, you've amassed quite a wealth of knowledge and perspective, and I'd love for you to take the reins on this conversation a bit and give some guidance to doctors that are looking to be efficient and profitable while returning to practice and beyond.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. So as I touched on a moment ago, right now, really more than ever, doctors need to dial in and maximize their digital and virtual workflow. This has really been discussed so often over the past few months, but we see practices not truly understanding the depth of what it means specifically for them. So I want to touch on a few pearls that you can evaluate to see really the benefit for your practice, and if you have implemented it, the success to your practice, and give you some insight to also be able to look to see where you have room for improvement with that. So really, it's important to start with the patient track throughout your practice. Evaluate and assess from the call flow through the appointment flow. Write this pathway down. Confirm you're not missing a segment of it that will ensure the patient's seamless transition into treatment through your thorough and trusted care in meeting your patient's needs. Ensure you have assigned team members. Start with the patient track. Are we okay?
Yep, yeah, we're good.
Something just reiterated back to me. Okay. I'll go back here, but it's important that we assign team members that manage each point of tracking. So in your virtual appointment communication platforms, delineate out the who, the when, and the how is this managed immediately within your practice. Don't simply implement this virtual appointment communication platform without providing this strategy on the back end to be successful with it. When done correctly, you'll be able to also identify where there might be a broken link and make adjustments to repair this process as well. I feel it's important for practices to be looking at the digital platforms that they have available that allows you quick, remote, and thorough access to communicate with your patients. So start with platforms such as SmileSnap or Weave or Loom for your recorded video appointments. Evaluate how these adjunct services fit into and enhance your existing schedule template, and then how to adjust to maximize the benefit it provides you and your patients. So this process and flow is very different than what our traditional process and flow has been in our industry. And if you attempt to introduce these services without making the necessary changes and adjustments in your internal processes, your teams will struggle. They'll struggle to get that buy-in to this perceived added work they need to do, and that you won't see the full advantage and benefit to your practice. This can turn into a really frustrating process for all involved, and it ends up really not working to the full benefit of the practice. I see practices simply jump on the bandwagon without a proactive strategy to know how to step up and really understand what you're looking to accomplish and why. Then assess which adjunct service will best really fit in and meet the needs of your practice. So once you've decided that, take the time to sit down and write out what those steps are that I just referenced: the people, the timelines, and the how. Get your team's agreements and buy-in prior to actually launching, and then fly with it. When it's done well, you'll have provided yourself the ability to assess the data and the process to determine if it's actually meeting your why and your what that you talked about and strategized in the beginning. So as we move through what the patient tracking flow is, continue in assessing how you will maintain this digital and efficient workflow through your patient's paperwork and their signed documents and their contracts. So there are amazing companies for you, such as Orthodox Pro or DocuSign or even Adobe Sign. And you can't simply just expect to email this out to your patients and know that they'll be returned on time or prior to coming into the office or starting treatment. So again, firm up your flow and who manage this process and how. It's about the service to your patients and the thoroughness of your team. Next, take time to look into the treatment modalities which allow you to go completely digital, virtual, and efficient. So it's no secret that a liner treatment combined with vibration therapy like Propel and dental monitoring AI have the ability to provide a very high-touch virtual treatment very quickly for your patients. So when you have your clinical and your scheduling protocols in place throughout your practice, you have the ability for appointments on demand with AI monitoring of your patient every 3 to 5 days or weekly. And these touch points are so much greater than simply having your patients come into your office for their appointment every 8 weeks or so. So take a minute to think about how your patients feel about what you are providing them. Efficient and convenient treatment is what your patients are looking for, hands down. Society is actually really thinking about and taking into consideration how many times they need to come into your office and how quickly you can provide them their ideal smile. So I train and coach and say often, when passion is involved, it's not high pressure sales. So think about what I spoke about a few minutes ago. Do you have your team's buy-in in these processes, services, and modalities for your patients? Because your team will exude the message that they believe in. So this is another important reason it's imperative to start at the beginning with your team and understanding your why. Why are you looking to implement any of these processes, protocols, or digital options for your patients? Your team is the key factor to what your patients think and feel about what you provide them. So make sure that you get your team's buy-in and provide them the clear path and structure and empower them to really maximize their professional strengths on your behalf. So when we look back to see what our practices have gone through over the last 6 months, really, the practices that have seen the minimal impact of the recent months-long closure to their bottom line are really the practices that have believed in the value of these digital and virtual workflow options and adjunct services. There's continued room for improvement in these areas within your practice, and as you dial the best processes in for your practice, you'll see the amazing results and efficiencies of starting not only the same amount of patients, but many more, and working in your office actually much less. So we have our clients all over the country that are starting patients consistently, even when the doctor isn't in the office. And I want to reiterate the importance of really scanning your patients at their new patient exams, if it's done in person, every single time. This will provide you the ability to start the patient remotely at any time using each of your adjunct services that we've just referenced or talked about above. So whether you are a small single location practice or a large doctor practice or a DSO group, these streams, channels, or lanes will provide that needed clarity with the high level of accountability that we're looking for from your team. So actually take the time to really create these visual flow charts, because these flow charts provide that clarity and understanding to your team, removing any perception that might get in the way of providing the highest level of patient experience. So that visual is also an excellent tool for your team as well. Earlier this week, I was training a new team member that doesn't have any experience in ortho, and I utilized that flow chart and patient path from the first point of contact through to the start. And the ease and efficacy of that flow chart and patient path, really in having that resource sped up this individual's understanding significantly very quickly. So it's a valuable tool to your practice, and I encourage you to take the time to really create and implement that internally. So I do, before we wrap up this evening, want to talk about and discuss where we might find some low-hanging fruit and opportunities within your practice. And I challenge you to look at your pending patients that have not started treatment yet and look at your observation program. So what percentage of your observation patients are not currently on your schedule? Throughout my recommendations of how to best reopen after COVID, I've very firmly and strongly recommended seeing every single one of your observations patients, but doing it virtually. Don't simply ask your patient if they'd like to schedule a virtual appointment, because you're giving them the ability to say no. Make sure that you are staying in the driver's seat and really guiding them through how their next appointment will be seen virtually. Your patients will really greatly appreciate you and your high level of care and consideration on their behalf when you do it and approach it that way. So, remember, your observation program should have effective messaging and clinical scripting that builds value to the growth and development process, really laying the foundation for that seamless transition into treatment when you recommend starting treatment. Your team are educators and influencers, not simply assistants to the appointment. Your observation, growth, and development program really is your bank account. So cultivate it, value it, and really ensure that you're taking care of it and that it's an effective stream of patients that are starting treatment in your practice. Next, look at and understand really the patients that have not started in your practice yet. What are the barriers to them not only choosing you, but choosing your recommended treatment modality today? They came to you for a reason. Did you meet their needs, delivering the information they need the way they need it delivered? Have you removed any barriers to them starting treatment and facilitated that seamless transition, that efficient path into treatment for them? If not, it is imperative that we understand the patient's story and why they chose to pursue you, but then stopped prior to starting treatment. So it's important that treatment coordinators and doctors don't bring their own personalizations into why a patient hasn't started treatment, and make sure that your treatment coordinator is also not bringing in their own perceptions into the exam room, such as, the patient can't afford a big down payment, or this patient won't want to do a virtual appointment. Unfortunately, I hear this often when I'm in practices talking about how we are implementing and we're going to facilitate virtual appointments. Team members will bring their own perception in the fact where they'll say patients don't want to do a virtual appointment. They'd rather wait until we open and come into our office. And I challenge that thought process, because our society has really changed through what COVID has done, and it's really not going to go back to what it was before. There's an awareness, a spatial awareness, and there's an awareness of what our patients are looking for in coming into your practice and finding a treatment that minimizes the number of times they have to come into your practice for their appointments and provides them the ideal smile very, very quickly. I actually have a very good friend and client of ours that has been reaching out to me often over the past month about actually how high their down payments have been after we've recently trained their team to remove all perceptions and create an engaged dialogue about the patient's needs with the financial investment. The process truly works if you have the ability to remove your own perceptions. So that's an area that we really recommend and encourage practices specifically right now as they tap into and capitalize on their pending patients. So in closing, I want to recommend and reiterate that you ensure that you are understanding what you desire to accomplish for your practice's profitabilities and your patients' experiences, and really maximize each of the amazing digital, virtual, and efficient modalities that you have available to you. Really choosing to invest in the needed tools and training for your team's greatness. So I hope you find that valuable, and I wanted to thank you, Kate, for the opportunity to share.
Of course. Thank you so much.
Great
Michelle.
insight.
Yeah, it was wonderful. And honestly,
Thank you.
could feel some of that stuff for my team. So it's not just for orthodontic practices or dental practices. That was amazing. So thank you so much. I can
Thank you.
totally see why so many top practices throughout the country value and trust your opinions and advice.
I may or may not have taken a lot of notes.
Perfect.
I'm so glad this is recording so I can go back and watch it. So it was very insightful. So thank you so much for that, Michelle. And lastly, I want to thank each of you, Sarah, Brandy, Jessica, Michelle, for taking time out of your evening to join together in Propel's continued efforts of women empowering women. I love that we did an industry women's night. This was a true pleasure tonight. So thank you all for being a part of it. I really appreciate it. I learned so much tonight. So thank you so much for joining us.